Leaving the country will become illegal. You'll be committing a crime if you move away from Germany. That's probably what the future will look like. I've warned about this several times. Now even the world is picking up on it. All that and a few more top stories about fuel. At the very end of this video, I'd say let's take a look at the hot topic of the weekend.
According to this, all men under 45 years old must register any stays abroad longer than 3 months in advance at the Bundeswehr Career Center.
Well, primarily, this doesn't necessarily target people in general, but rather those tax exiles who say here in Germany, we don't really want to pay taxes and we're better off abroad. Because did you know, if you can prove that you have lived in another country for 7 months, for example, so longer than half a year, with your main residence there, then you're lucky because you can be subject to taxation in that other country. I should note that I'm saying this because I'm not allowed to give tax advice. And the first thing that was actually done with this was not to strengthen compulsory military service, but rather to make it easier to collect taxes from tax exiles. Now you can simply forbid them from staying there for a longer period. By the way, if you want to know the truth about our political spectrum, feel free to leave me a like and a subscription. Feel free to help this channel regain its former strength. Thank you so much for your support. And let's take a closer look at what else this law contains, which is actually catastrophic.
They have to register and get approval. The men are required to do this under the new law that has been in effect since January 1st.
But now they've really made a huge issue of it in the Bundestag. I mean, they've really opened a huge can of worms. Even here in certain media outlets, people now think that this topic urgently needs to be discussed. It's not about overturning this law. No, they just want to bring up the topic of moving away again. And women, yes, why aren't women included? A huge controversy came up over Easter because equality doesn't apply here. And now, of course, some men are coming forward and saying, yes, but women have always fought for their equality. Now they should show here as well that they really mean it. And that's where the big problem begins. And the Bundestag is now dealing with equality and people moving away from Germany just to include that in the law, not to change the law. That's how absurd this story is. And above all, this is about two really big things. First, it's about what's called capital flight, so that Lars Klingbeil can keep his tax money. And secondly, it's about preparing for a war that we never want to have. And again, if no one can leave Germany anymore, then you don't necessarily need conscription if you want to mobilize the population as quickly as possible anyway. Clever move, don't you think?
Since the first outlet started reporting on it, it's been heavily discussed.
Wait, I reported about it at length in October. It's just strange that now, when a NATO incident has come even closer to us, the whole thing is being brought up. Also, given that women might also have to be drafted, let's take a purely hypothetical example, okay? Iran would launch a missile toward Turkey, and this missile would kill people in Turkey. And now we would have a NATO incident. Well, that sounds pretty far-fetched, doesn't it? Or not? Oh, okay. We've almost had situations like this before. Well, let's just leave it at that for now. So, and now a NATO incident happens. Either Iran or Russia or whoever. Now leaving the country is immediately forbidden. For you, for everyone else. And I always get the message, yeah, but what am I supposed to do if I have a house here, for example, that I can't sell? I can't help everyone, and I'm being completely honest about that. I can help you, including in follow-up videos where I talk about it again and explain what you can do, yeah. But I definitely can't help everyone here. I can only help many people who can simply leave here, and that's already something. And if I help just one single person with this video, then I've helped one more person than this government does. And actually, I can consider myself lucky. Okay, back to the context. If, for example, we were to have a NATO incident now, then the borders would be closed. We wouldn't be able to get out at all. And then you don't need to report anywhere anymore. However, and this is also part of the truth, if you have moved away somewhere since January, then of course you are still in the German armed forces system. And they can bring you back from any other NATO country, or rather from any other European country. Clever, don't you think, without you ever noticing it, because you already deregistered yourself and you are already registered with the German armed forces.
A spokesperson for the Ministry of Defense has now stated that the exit permit will be handled with minimal bureaucracy as long as military service remains voluntary.
Yes, just a moment. I also wrote to an acquaintance of mine over the weekend who was home on leave from Lithuania, and I think it was Saturday. We had a lively conversation then, and he explained it to me as well. It's not even about making this unbureaucratic, and what, please, in Germany is unbureaucratic. He told me it's solely about tracking where people are going right now. And it's pretty good to know that if people leave the country now, they will be brought back immediately. This government, I'll say in quotation marks as he put it, is afraid or absolutely wants to become or absolutely wants to make itself ready for war. Now you can think for yourself what he means by that. It's not like our Minister of Defense hasn't already said that. We either have to become ready for war, and then during a NATO exercise, he really got his ass kicked by Ukraine. We just have to call things what they are. He told me, Chris A., in the brigade in Lithuania, that's what he was called. He said, especially for us, it's very, very good to know who's currently in the Baltic countries, for example, who we could easily pull in. This information is no longer protected by data privacy laws, so now we can access it, for example. And we know exactly how many people are currently living in Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, or even Poland, for example, who are working there. And theoretically, we could have the military police pick them up immediately. Now, the question is, how many people actually live in Switzerland? And how many people live in Italy? And how many people live in Cyprus? It would be a really brilliant move to be able to call these people up immediately, fly them to the next training facilities, and then send them to the front at some point later. Of course, that's just, let's say, nonsense from me, but technically it could be implemented immediately. And these mechanisms, they were implemented, but nobody cared in October. Now it's being blown out of proportion.
Unfortunately, the appropriate administrative regulation that is supposed to make this easier doesn't exist yet.
Germany, the country with the most bureaucracy, where everything is completely, I really have to say it, planned out from start to finish. But these things just don't exist, which again actually supports the thesis that it's really just about, I'll just say it, catching people in the end. And I really have to say it like this. It's only about simply tracking where people are at the moment. And if you really want to start or join a war, then you have all kinds of people at this location. I would say let's postpone the topic about electricity until this evening. We'll make a somewhat longer video about it tonight. I hope I was able to explain to you here why. What I talked about in October, what I warned about so strongly, has now suddenly been picked up by the press. They're downplaying it again, saying it's not that bad, but honestly, I would say it's 1 second to midnight. And please, dear government, turn back, get moving and create peace, and do it without weapons. That would help all of us here. And that's why this morning, right after Easter, I'm making this warning video again. It's not about not wanting people to go on vacation or work in other countries. It's only about two things. Steuerflucht verhindern. And secondly, to gather the manpower we need in order to possibly go to war against Russia or even Iran, whatever the case may be. By the way, neither of these things serves the national interest. It would be a repeat of what we've already experienced. The only question is, were the National Socialists actually completely removed from all government agencies back then? No, they weren't. And I just wonder, who is in power again today?